Sports Team presents your Southern Tier Kickoff.
Good morning, and thank you for starting your championship Saturday right here on WBNG and the Southern Tier Kickoff Show. We are in the red zone as we have just a couple of shows left for you this season, but before we put the ball in the end zone for 2024, we still have Conference Championship Week, and of course next week the Army-Navy game exclusively here on WBNG-12 Sports. So let's go ahead and snap the ball on Championship Saturday here and bring in the rest of the starting lineup for the STK team. Kevin Quinn and Kyle Spisak to my left, and Michael Villegas here from 12 Sports on my right. Gentlemen, how are we doing this morning?
Championship football, we're doing great.
I mean, Mountain West Championship last night was an instant classic. Getting into the big boys today, can't get better than that.
Which one of you guys had Ashton Genty as well as your...
That would be...
that's why you brought it up, huh?
Wait a minute. It was definitely me.
One of you guys had McCord.
Oh, no,
you had McCord.
You had McCord.
I had McCord because I had to take someone other than Genty.
You gotta get the record straight here.
I've been on the Genty train since week 2. Let's get that there.
All right. Well, next week we'll break down and we'll pick our finalists for the Heisman again one more time. But before we do anything, let's get into it because there is a few big games going on around the Southern Tier here this morning. One of them, of course, the number 2 team in the country, Cortland, at home to host the NCAA Regional Finals and the 23rd ranked Springfield Pride. Kevin, I know you and I were talking earlier this week about this matchup. What can you tell us about what's going to hit the field at the top of the hour?
Yeah, well, there's only 8 unbeaten teams in Division III college football, and 2 of them meeting this afternoon just up I-81. The Cortland Red Dragons hosting the Springfield Pride for the 3rd round of the Division III playoffs. These 2 teams meeting for the first time since the 2021 NCAA playoffs, where Cortland came out on top 26-21. Preparing for Springfield will be a little different than usual for the Red Dragons as they run a triple option offense, which leads Division III nationally with more than 450 rushing yards per game. They have 5 different players averaging more than 50 yards a game on the ground. Cortland's already a 23-game win streak into this one, and their Division III All-American quarterback Zach Boyce says they need to bring their all to keep that going.
Play physical football, man. You know, it's football in December. You gotta play tough. You gotta play smart. We gotta protect the ball, and we gotta make a lot of plays on offense. You know, we gotta capitalize. We gotta, play in Springfield. You gotta score points when you have the ball. So excited for the challenge and looking forward to it.
Some keys to the game here for the Red Dragons. Number 1, get things going on the ground. It's December football. Things are cold and they get physical. Cortland needs to have long, sustained drives with running back Ethan Gallo featured in order to take control. Number 2, sell out to stop the run. Springfield only threw the ball 6 times in their last game. The Red Dragons need to know the football is likely to stay on the ground, and they got to step up and make those tackles. Number 3, win the turnover battle. The Pride may not throw the ball a lot, but an interception on just 1 pass could turn the tide in what's shaping up to be a shootout in a very, very close game.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a chance to get up on Wednesday and talk with head coach Kurt Patrick about the game and what they needed to do to come out with a victory. And as you mentioned, stopping the run, one of the big things he talked about was time of possession and ball control. When you play a triple option team, when you play someone like Springfield, you may not get as many possessions. We talked about it a little bit with Army-Navy and going up against Notre Dame, being able to maximize on those possessions. You mentioned Ethan Gallo, but I know Alfano St. John, the wide receiver, is another big part of that offense. What can you tell us about him?
I mean, having a good wideout is going to be huge in a game when you really are going against that triple option because it's so run heavy. That's all everybody has their mind on is run heavy, run heavy, run heavy. Like you mentioned, they want to get the ground game going for Cortland. But if you get that ground game going, that then opens up those passing lanes and creating separation. You got a guy like him. You're able to get him the ball downfield. Those huge explosive plays, that's what's going to be important for Cortland and making that run for their 2nd national championship in a row.
I know a big part of that national championship is that defense. We talked a little bit about it, stopping that run. You got a chance to highlight a couple of the All-Americans that are up there, including the defensive end, Nick Lodardo. What does the defense bring?
Lodardo himself, big number 95, is a dominant defensive end on that edge. He'll set that edge on top of that, and I think that defensive line could really get the defense or the run game stopped on that one.
And just finally, Kevin, real quick, being that the fact that this game is here at Grady Field, what type of advantage does that have at home?
Definitely, you have your home fans behind you. It's not like you're playing a team from down south that doesn't know how to play in this cold weather. Springfield, of course, coming from Massachusetts. But, just being in that home stadium in December, playoff energy, riding such a big win streak like the Red Red Dragons are, should give them a little bit of momentum.
All right, awesome. And as mentioned, this is not the only big game going on here with the team from the 607 on Saturday. The #1 ranked team in New York State, the unbeaten 13-0 Maine Anwell Spartans. They'll kick off at 3 o'clock for the Class B championship. But before that, early this morning, Moravia hit the turf at the JMA Wireless Dome for the 8-man championships. And 12 Sports' Keith Savage is live right there, right now, for the New York State High School Football Championships with more. Keith, how's it going at the Dome?
Yeah, Zach, it's great right here. I'm not in the cold. It's nice and warm. I was here bright and early at 8 a.m. For JMA, they were packing with a lot of games, and the one that started off was Moravia. Moravia against Frankfurt Schuyler. That did not go the Blue Devils' way. 70-28. 9 offensive drives the Maroons, and they could not be stopped. Every single one ended up being a touchdown. But if you're the Blue Devils, you still have to be happy on how this season. You lost to Trumansburg in the Section 4 title and beat them in the semis to get to this game. You got to remember how this loss fails and make sure that you have that momentum going to 5. But at 3 p.m., it's the Maine Anwell Spartans, the team everyone loves. Last time they lost was at this field against Ryan in the state championship. They tried to get a 3, they could not do it.
All right, we seem to be having a little bit of technical difficulties. It's funny, the JMA Wireless Dome, formerly the Carrier Dome, never any Wi-Fi and never any AC in the unit, huh?
Kind of ironic.
Yeah, Syracuse alum, right? All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about that game that he was going to be talking about. #1 ranked team in the state, Class B, 13-0, Maine Anwell. They are going for their 4th straight trip to the Dome. Now, last year not as successful, losing 28-7 to Rye, but I know you got a chance with our preseason playbooks talking about being hunted. The hunters, not the hunted. Yeah. You know, what can we expect this afternoon at 3?
Hopefully a great game. I mean, they're back there, and like you said, they were hungry. I mean, they've been a dominant, I would say, dynasty in high school football here in the Southern Tier, and now they lost last year, and that stung them. And they came out hungry this season, and like you said, they took on that mantra that they're the hunters this season, and I think Coach Gallagher has really took that upon the team and make that their thing this year, and that what motivates them. And you see it every time they hit the field. I mean, how many times have we gone to games and covered them, and their run game, their pass game? I mean, Ocker can get it done. It's a pick your poison on that team, and I think Coach Gallagher, the way he runs it, and when I saw early on in that preseason playbook that the way they run practice, it just felt like a different type of practice, the way they ran it. So I hope for a good game today.
All right, and make sure everyone stays tuned as well, because we will have highlights from that game. Excuse me, sorry about that. We'll have highlights from that game at 10 and 11 o'clock tonight. I'll be there myself. I'm going to go tag out for Keith up at the Dome, and I will be there as well. We got basketball, Lemoyne, the battle for I-81, interstate battle, of course. But we have lots and more to talk about this morning. We will be back on your Southern Tier Kickoff show in just a moment.
12 Sports Team presents your Southern Tier Kickoff.
Thank you for staying with us this morning, and welcome back in. We move now to the Midwest and the Big Ten championship game, an unexpected matchup between the #1 in the CFP brackets right now, the Oregon Ducks, and #3 Penn State. Kyle Spisak breaks down the Big Ten title game for us. Kyle, what can we expect at Lucas Oil?
Thanks, Zach. And with a huge upstate last week in the shoe, seeing #2 Buckeyes fall to the Michigan Wolverines, this opened up the door for Penn State to control their destiny and have the chance to win their 2nd Big Ten championship since 2018. The Nittany Lions head to Indianapolis, where they take on the #1 team in the past 5 weeks in the Oregon Ducks. Last week, Penn State really came together on offense, pummeling Maryland 44-7 on a cold Happy Valley night. This game saw Tyler Warren break the Penn State tight end touchdown record, and he is currently 5 yards away from breaking the Big Ten all-time tight end receiving yards record. Singleton was back and healthy for the first time really this year as well, rushing for 2 tutties on 87 yards and 13 carries. Getting these playmakers involved will be huge in this game, as Coach Franklin stressed the need to stay ahead of the sticks in tonight's matchup.
The thing that really kind of stands out when you look at Oregon is you want to stay out like everybody does, but you want to stay out of obvious passing situations. You want to stay ahead of the sticks. Starting fast against this type of team is going to be really important. We're going to have to play well for 4 quarters.
And that audio is a little bit rough, but so is this time of the year for many teams. The keys to the game for Penn State tonight will be, for one, stopping those explosive plays. Oregon is able to get downfield, get those 25-yard plus plays. They got to limit those this game. That was their big fault against Ohio State. Second, the Nittany Lions need to get the ball to their playmakers' hands. Get it to Singleton and Warren. They're your best guys. They can get you those yards. Lastly, Penn State has a dominant pass rush with Abdul Carter having 10 sacks and 20 tackles for loss this year. They need to be dominant on defense and contain Gabriel in the pocket.
I'm guessing Coach Franklin did his press conference at the JMA Wireless Dome as well.
Yeah, right?
We got to be careful, though. I hope they're not a sponsor or anything like that. So, listen, we are going to break down everything that is the Penn State game and the Big Ten Championship that you can find here. You can watch that right on WBNG. That's going to be coming up in just a few moments as we head into our picks. We're going to break down the 4 big conference championship games in just a few moments. But we're going to move on up I-81 just a little bit, where a Syracuse Orange team turned around this year and turned it around with first-year head coach Fran Brown and Ohio State transfer Kyle McCord at quarterback. Michael, how'd the Orange go ahead and do that all this season?
Yeah, well, the Syracuse Orange went 9-3 this season with a big upset win over number 6 Miami Hurricanes. The Orange came back and won it after being down 21 points in the first half. 42-38. Syracuse went 6-1 at home and 5-3 in conference this season. First-year head coach Fran Brown is now the second head coach to record a 9 regular season wins in his first year at the helm. Quarterback Kyle McCord led the country in passing yards per game with 360, and completions per game with 30. McCord holds the Syracuse single-season records for passing yards and touchdowns in a season with 29 touchdowns and throwing for 4,326 yards. Kyle McCord was also named a Manning Award finalist. Here's what head coach Fran Brown had to say when asked if this year lived up to his vision.
No, not at all. Wanted to win a national championship. Wanted to go to the conference championship. Those 2 things didn't happen, but I guess it's progress, but, you know, I wanted to go to a national championship. There was nothing else on my mind except for trying to repeat what happened in 1959 or at least 1987. Like, those 2 things were important to me, and we fell short of that, but we're growing, you know, so we just got to keep pushing. But I will never be satisfied with second place or third place. That's like loser's mentality. But I'm happy for our players that our seniors got to raise the standard of what it takes to be a Syracuse football player.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what it does take to be a Syracuse football player, because there was a few big stars this year. You talk about Pena, Gadsden, you talk about McCord. So how do you replace them? I mean, not everyone is leaving, but we were just talking about, is this a spark or is this the kindling to, you know, reflame the Syracuse program?
That's my concern, is that this year was such a big boost or a jump start to the program that next year the expectations are now there. You're now at a 9-3 team. So Fran Brown, he went out and got Kyle McCord. He had that connection. That's great because the transfer portal is like the free agency now of college football. So he went out and got a big-name quarterback. Now, can you do that again? He's leaving, probably going to go to the NFL draft. And can you go replace him with either another, we were talking about transfer, or do you go get a recruit? Now, Fran Brown was the number 1 recruiter in the nation when he was the defensive backs coach at Georgia. So that's why you go out and hire him. But it's going to take some time to kind of build that pipeline and recruiting, you know, background. They did have a bunch of recruits at the Miami game, so that's going to help with getting a big win there. But it's definitely going to help.
All right, so let's talk real quick about recruiting. You had mentioned some that are already there, a couple hundred at the Miami game. What can we expect as we bring them in?
Yeah, I think something that's really interesting, we mentioned that Fran Brown is known as a recruiter. But the one thing that Syracuse football has sort of struggled with in recent years is bringing guys that are already in Syracuse, already in the city, into the program. This year, they have three guys coming in from Christian Brothers Academy in Syracuse, who's going to be playing tonight at the Dome in the AA championship game. Those guys are Academy in Albany. Yeah. Exactly. But those guys are staying in Syracuse because they want to play for Fran Brown. Typically, the best players on that team are going all across the country. But these guys want to stay in Cuse, and that's a first big step for this program.
Yeah, and actually, you talk about just the Syracuse area, but if you go on to 24/7 or Rivals or Max Prep right now, you look at the top recruits across New York State, there's a lot of orange S's next to their name, where there used to be Penn State, there used to be Rutgers, there used to be those other schools. You're seeing a lot staying right here in the central New York area. And we want you to stay right here as well, as we'll be back in just a few moments with the picks for all four of the big-time championship games coming up this afternoon.
12 Sports Team presents your Southern Tier Kickoff.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER if you are a Pennsylvania resident, or call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY if you are a resident of New York. Please gamble responsibly. All right, let's take a look real quick at the picks. We break it down. We have 5 games left to pick, 4 this week, 1 next week. I have a 5-game advantage over Connor Thompson. He, of course, picked everything different than I did. So if he goes 5-0, I go 0-5, we'll have a top. If I get a win at all, he gets a loss at all, then I am your champion. We have a lot of guys here still able to get to 500 as well. So let's get right into them, and we start with the Big Ten Championship, Penn State at Oregon. I'm going to go ahead and take Oregon here. They are the #1 team in the nation. This is a close spread, and if you asked us a week ago, we didn't think Penn State was going to be in this game. Sure, they're playing with house money and all of that, but Oregon wants to buy. Oregon wants to go ahead and be the #1 team for a reason. Stay close at home and go to the Rose Bowl. I'm taking the Ducks. Who you got?
You're going to take the Ducks, too. I think this spread minus 3.5 is almost a little disrespectful to the #1 team in the country. Do I think they'll blow Penn State out? No, but I think this is more of like a 1-score, 7-point kind of game.
And Penn State's big downfall this year has been they haven't been great on the rush, stopping the rush. They have a great pass rush. Fantastic. That's going to be a huge point for them here, is really keeping Gabriel in that pocket and not letting him get out and make those explosive plays. However, Oregon's offense, they are a steamroller. They are one of the best offenses in the nation. Gabriel, Tez Johnson, they're just a great offense. I think that it's going to be a bit of a closer game than some people are expecting, those 14, 21-point leads. It's going to be within 7 to 10 points, but I'm going with Oregon here.
All right.
I'm also going to go with Oregon's #1 team in the country for a reason. And like Kevin said, I thought this spread would be a little bit different. All these spreads were pretty close, obviously, in championship weekend. They're going to be about a touchdown, so you're basically just, kind of picking. But at minus 3.5, I think the Oregon Ducks will do it. For me, it comes down to coaching. I do like Franklin, but I think Oregon has the edge on that one.
Yeah, Dan Lanahan has to come up here in a big-time game. Yeah. And I'll tell you, we talked about the Heisman. Dylan Gabriel, dark horse shot. He could have his Heisman moment here as well in the Big Ten Championship game. We move to the ACC Championship game. Clemson with a dark horse chance to get into the CFP. They're going against #8 SMU. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing like chaos in college football. I think Clemson wins this game. I think there's going to be controversy on whether or not SMU gets in next week. So I'm going to take the points. I'm going to take the Tigers.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here, Zach, and I don't particularly think this is going to be a close game. You look at the schedule that Clemson's played this year. They've played teams like Georgia. They've played teams like South Carolina. Yes, they lost to those teams. SMU has played basically nobody outside of conference besides BYU. They only put 15 points up versus them. Clemson all-time 8-1 in ACC championship games, 9-1 after today.
And this is Clemson going for their 7th college football appearance. This is playoff appearance. This is SMU looking for their first. And this is really the battle of transfers versus refusing to transfer. SMU's got about 22 transfers on their team. Dabo, we all know how he feels about the transfer portal. He just simply doesn't use it. However, I think the experience of a coach who has been here several times, obviously the Trevor Lawrence era, the Kellen Mond era, Watson era, they were a great team there. I'm going to have to go with the experience of Clemson over this shot-in-the-dark SMU team.
All right.
This one was very close for me, but I'm going with SMU. I mean, they have the ACC Coach of the Year. Dabo and Cade Klubnik at Clemson have been a little bit inconsistent, but you do make a good point. They have the strength of schedule on their side, but I just think SMU is on a hot streak right now, and I think they have the momentum going in.
All right, and no disrespect here to the Big 12 championship game, but let's roll through this one pretty quickly. We got Iowa State and Arizona State. I think Arizona State's been a sleeping dark horse. People have not really respected them a lot, and they've won a couple of big games recently. I'm going to go ahead and get Arizona State. Who you got?
I'm going to go to Arizona State as well. Just one of the hottest teams in the country right now. I see them keeping it rolling.
ASU hasn't won a Big 12 championship since 2007, but Iowa State hasn't done it since 1912, and Skadabo's been outstanding all season long. He's one of the best rushers from the scrimmage yards, only behind Ashton Genty, and even on missed tackles, only behind Ashton Genty. Forks up. Gotta go with the Forks.
I'm going Sun Devils as well. I think Arizona State is on the hot hand, like Kevin said. But this one's going to be close. I mean, you got number 16 versus number 15, Arizona State. So I'm going with the favorite there.
All right, and let's finish up with the big game of the night, Georgia and Texas. Well, actually, I mean, the big game of the day is actually probably 1-3 versus Penn State and Oregon. But still, Georgia, Texas, you got 3 versus 5. I'm going to go ahead and take Georgia. This is a home game for them. This is in the Dome. They know what they're doing. This is the SEC championship game. They got here for a reason. I think they've been disrespected all year, and when it all comes down to it, they may be holding a national championship.
Yeah, I mean, this Georgia team just doesn't look like your typical Georgia team to me, and that's in terms of just how sloppy they are, how inconsistent they are. I think that Texas has had their ups and downs, but a lot of injuries on that roster throughout the year. Let's go with the Horns today.
The question with Georgia is, are you going to get that second half Georgia against Alabama, or are you going to get that Georgia that played against Georgia Tech last week? It has been a lot better for Carson Beck, 12 touchdowns, no interceptions the last 3 games. But I think that Texas just has their number on this one. Texas has looked really good lately. Got to go with the Horns.
Yeah, I agree 100% with both of them. I think who depends on what Georgia you get. Do you get the Georgia that played against Georgia Tech, where you're going to 7 overtimes and barely squeaking out a win against a good Georgia Tech team? But I think the Texas Longhorns have been consistent. You don't know who it's going to be, whether Manning or Ewers, so it's kind of pick your poison there, and I think Sarkisian will get the best of Kirby today.
All right, as you guys talk all about this, the one thing that it reminds me of, this reminds me a lot of the talk about Kansas City last year. They won the Super Bowl. I think Georgia might be the same way. Listen, I'm going to thank Kevin and Keith because they won't be here next week. Michael, myself, and Kyle will finish up your Southern Tier Kickoff, our last show for Army-Navy. Thank you.